I know you're probably like, Daniel, didn't you just do a hardware news video yesterday? Yeah, but there's so much more news today, including 40 Super Series release date rumors, as well as 16 series getting discontinued, AMD's FSR 3 going open source, as well as a whole bunch more information about that, Unreal Engine 5 plugin, more games gonna be supporting it, as well as Intel launched a whole new generation of processors for their mobile lineup and making some huge claims, especially about the GPU performance doubling their previous generation and as well as being faster than AMD's 780M, according to their claims, and there are some third-party reviews out there. Got a few other things to talk about as well. Let's go ahead and wrap back around to the beginning. Buckle up, let's go. We've got 40 Super Series info. So we're seeing reported by a variety of sites, this is the WCCF Tech article, saying that the RTX 4070 Super will hit shelves on January 17th, the 4070 Ti Super on the 24th, and the 4080 Super on the 31st of January. We're also seeing that this is apparently the original information is coming from the Chinese language forum IT Home, and that the reveal for all of this will be coming on the 8th of January, which is CES. Now, what should we expect from these GPUs if this ends up being true? Again, this is still in the unofficial category. This is not officially announced by NVIDIA at this point. Again, the rumor for that official announcement is the 8th of January. The videocards.com article has helpfully summarized all of the leaked specs up to this point. So again, not official, but this is the best rumored information available at this point. What would we be expecting from the 4080 Super when it possibly actually hits on January 31st if the rumors are true? Well, it's rumored to still be a 320 watt GPU and still have 16 gigabytes of memory, which only leaves the CUDA core bump from 9,728 up to 10,240, which is honestly not that many more CUDA cores. So maybe there's something else going on here that will additionally improve performance. I don't know. Could the memory be faster in some way? And I mean, for those people disappointed by it still being 16 gigabytes of memory, like, I get wanting to have more VRAM. However, I really don't see 16 gigabytes being an issue in the vast majority of situations for a very long period of time. I'm not saying you couldn't ever run into a situation, but I think 16 is pretty safe. I would have liked to see a bigger bump here, though. We'll see what happens when we do get official announcements, if they ever do indeed occur. Now, what about the 4070 Ti Super, though? This is the one where I think there's the most room to improve a product that a lot of people like. I said, you know, I don't hate 16 gigabytes of VRAM. I don't hate 12 gigabytes of VRAM, but I hate paying $800 for 12 gigabytes of VRAM. For 1440p card in my testing, 12 gigabytes of VRAM, it's fine right now. There's a few edge cases, but the fact that there's already a few edge cases means that you're paying $800 for a graphics card and then using it for a long time, possibly. I'd rather have more VRAM for $800, right? And it's up against the 7900 XT, which is a 20 gigabyte graphics card. It just makes you be like, really, is this the card I want to buy? So the rumored spec on the 4070 Ti is a jump to 16 gigabytes of VRAM from 12, and I think that that would make people feel a lot more comfortable with the purchase, especially if it comes with more performance. And we're rumored a boost from 7,680 CUDA cores up to 8,448 CUDA cores. So performance and memory bump certainly sounds good. The question would be pricing, though. If it came in at the same price, that would be one thing. If they try to bump up the price another $100 or something like that, well, then you're up against something like the 7900 XTX, which kind of puts you up against stiffer competition, right? So hopefully we get this without a price bump. We'll see what happens. And then the 4070, again, the rumored launch date being January 17th. And the rumored specs on this one are staying 12 gigabytes and jumping up 5,888 CUDA cores up to 7,168. So that is a noticeable bump. And, you know, staying at 12 gigabytes of VRAM, again, price is everything on this, right? Because, like I said, I don't hate 12 gigabytes of VRAM for 1440p and below right now. Again, there are certain edge cases, that kind of a thing. But if you're not paying, you know, $800, 12 gigabytes doesn't feel so bad to me. And with a performance bump, again, what price are we talking here? The 4070 originally came out at $600, and it is now selling for more frequently $550 and occasionally even below. I've seen them as low as $520 new. If the 4070 Super comes in at the original MSRP of $600, then I still don't hate 12 gigabytes if it comes with a decent performance boost. And, you know, I think this could be a pretty cool product. And especially if it then pushed the original 4070 down to 500 even. If we had that at 500 and then at $600 got a performance bump, you know, that's pretty interesting to me. What do you guys think about all this? What kind of price, if these rumored specs are true, what sort of price points would they have to hit for you to feel like they are good deals? Let me know in the comments section, and now let's bump into the next bit of NVIDIA information. This is still in kind of the rumored side of things, but the rumor is that the rest of the 16 series is dead. So there had already been rumors that the 1660 and up were kind of done already in the supply chain. This is reported by videocards.com, but is coming from the Chinese language board channels and translated here, saying that according to reports, starting from the first quarter of next year, NVIDIA will completely cease the full-scale production of GTX 16 series GPUs. This means that from Q1 onward, NVIDIA GTX 16 series GPUs may no longer be supplied to the add-in card brand manufacturers. If NVIDIA indeed discontinues the entire production line of the GTX 16 series, it will not only involve the already discontinued 1660 Super, but also include the two lower-end logistics models, GTX 1650 and GTX 1630. At that point, there won't be any product models to temporarily fill the gap in this price range. So the idea here is basically that starting in Q1, NVIDIA would stop supplying new GPU chips to the board manufacturers, you know, those like Asus and why is everything else slipping my mind? Gigabyte, all of them, right? The ones put the card on their cooler and everything. So eventually they would run out of supply, and those would just leave the new market. That's the rumor here. The question then is, you know, what goes into that price class? So you know, we'll have to see what happens. We have rumors of NVIDIA again launching like a 3056 gigabyte to have a lower priced card in the market, but do we have anything that would be as cheap as like a 1630 was? We'll have to see what happens. Now, let's go ahead and move on to FSR 3 news. So AMD publishes full FSR 3 source code for DX12 and Unreal Engine 5, making integration in games easier for developers. This is absolutely huge. So basically, we originally had FSR 3 launch in two games that almost no one plays, Immortals of Avium and Forspoken. And, you know, the implementation also had some serious issues. It did not work well with variable refresh rate, so it was only really pacing frames well if you were locked to your monitor's, you know, VSync window, that kind of a thing. And then we went a long time without seeing another game. We finally got Avatar Frontiers of Pandora being the next game to get an implementation, and in my testing, as well as other people's testing, it seems to be a much better implementation. The big thing now would be getting it out into more games with this better version of it. Now, I dug into AMD's GPU Open post about this, and it has some really interesting information in it. So first of all, source code available. So game devs can try to just get this into their game, and there's some documentation for doing that. Also, again, the Unreal Engine 5 plugin available, and that's huge because so many games get made in Unreal Engine. Having a plugin available can make it a lot simpler to implement into games. I think that's why we see DLSS 3 frame generation available in most Unreal Engine 5 games that we've seen, although some have disabled it later on due to crashing reports. But anyway, it's just that there's a plugin. It makes it nice and quick and easy. Now, there's some other interesting information here. Here they're talking about how they did, it's not people's imagination, they did now in this version confirm that they have implemented a variable refresh rate support into this version of the code. They do mention that one thing to note is that utility overlays provided by third parties will incur a cost which the FSR 3 frame pacing algorithm may be unable to measure and consider. Overlays should always be implemented efficiently with minimal GPU resource cost to minimize impact. We also recommend that hardware-accelerated GPU scheduling, which was made available on some of their GPUs in their latest driver update, be turned on if supported for best frame pacing results. So a couple really interesting things to note there. Number one, turn on hardware-accelerated GPU scheduling for the best frame pacing. Number two, they're saying that if you're using software overlays now by third parties, now they don't specify which ones, that could actually cause issues with their frame pacing. So that's an important thing to note when you're judging the smoothness of their frame pacing if you're monitoring that with third-party software. So that's a big thing to note when you're testing this out for yourself and deciding how smooth it is. Because a lot of times you'd turn on an overlay to monitor performance when you're testing out a feature like this. Well, they are claiming that could cause issues. Secondly, they are saying there is an example where poor pacing could still cause issues even with variable refresh rate. They're saying if the delta between presents is too small, the monitor can believe that you're outside the variable refresh rate range. And when VSync is enabled, that would cause a dropped frame, and when VSync is disabled, that would result in screen tearing, even though the game FPS could show a value that's within the VRR range. So they're basically saying that there are some places where you could get a dropped frame or some screen tearing introduced if the time between presented frames is too low. So important stuff to notice there. They're also going into some debug features they have available for developers and things like that. But this sounds more like the kind of stuff game devs would be interested in and less for my audience, although I'm sure there are game devs who do watch my videos. Now, here's interesting though, they have more games confirmed to be getting FSR 3 support. No specific dates on those, but we do now have a bunch more games here. Which is very interesting and good to see. So, cool stuff. More games confirmed to have it. It's gone open source to make it easier to implement. It has an Unreal Engine 5 plugin, making it easy to implement in a ton of games. And they are specifically noting the improvement to variable refresh rate support, which is absolutely huge. And like I said, a couple important things to note to get the smoothest experience possible. Now, let's go ahead and talk about Intel. Intel has launched some new CPUs today. Their Intel, let me refresh this page apparently here. So this is a videocards.com article on the launch of Intel's Core 100 Meteor Lake series. Saying up to 16 CPU cores, Arc GPU with 8 Xe cores, and improved AI performance. Some interesting things to note about the architecture. This is moving to a tile architecture. There's a graphics tile, an SoC tile, an I/O tile, and a compute tile. Interestingly, only the compute tile seems to be being actually made on Intel's own process nodes, although this is their first, I think it's on Intel 4, which is like 7 nanometer or something like that. I think it's their first product on that small of a node. The rest of these are coming from TSMC, although they can, because it's a tiled design, they can come from different nodes. Also, interestingly, they're claiming that the SoC tile does have a couple of cores that can handle some really lightweight tasks in an incredibly efficient power consumption mode. And then in their compute tile, you would have some you would have a bunch of efficiency cores, and then as you go up the product stack, you get more performance cores. So pretty interesting stuff. Regarding the nodes for all of those different pieces, we're seeing the CPU tile is Intel 4, the 3D Favros base die is Intel 16, GPU tile is TSMC N5, SoC tile is TSMC N6, and so is the I/O tile. So that's certainly interesting stuff. These are definitely some big changes, and a lot of it seems to be around efficiency. But then they are making some big claims regarding the performance of the integrated GPU. They're claiming that it is up to 2 times faster, which is not the same thing as averaging 2 times faster, than their own Intel 13th Gen and i7 processors when running at 28 watts. In a mobile configuration, it is important that you're talking about the same TDPs. And you can see the variety of games tested and their claimed performance advantage of their new generation. They're also making some big claims against AMD's Ryzen 7840U at 28 watts. That would be including a 780M mobile APU for the iGPU on the AMD chip here. And again, these are Intel first-party slides, but this is a lot of games. And that is, some big claims. They're claiming this is at 1080p medium with no AI upscaling. Although they are saying that these new chips do have their own XeSS AI upscaling support. Anyway, so some big claims there. Now, is it actually playing out in reality? I'll link all my sources in the video description today. One thing to note is videocards.com did have a nice roundup of places that have gotten some not chips, I guess, actual laptops, right? Because the thing about reviewing mobile processors is it's in a laptop, right? So you're kind of putting laptops up against other laptops. So some review outlets of these, I've looked at a couple of them and will highlight a few interesting things to note. So the Notebook Check review, headline is basically that Intel promises a big increase for the new Arc GPU, as well as increased efficiency, which they did test. But their headline is that the Ultra 7 155H. So again, the naming scheme now is instead of i7, we have Core Ultra 7. You would also have a Core Ultra 5 instead of an i5, and so on. So there's that branding change. So we're looking at the Ultra 7 155H. And they're saying that it only convinces with GPU performance. And so they're less impressed by its, maybe its other stats. Here's a slide of the whole overall lineup. And there is the H and U variants of these. Now, this article is claiming the, somewhere in here they talk about the power distinction between them. You can read this review for its the full details on all of this, to be honest. I just wanted to highlight a couple of things. One is gaming performance. So it's one thing when they test out synthetic benchmarks, where it does seem to line up closer to what Intel was claiming. So when you look at their 3D Mark scores like Firestrike, you can see their GPUs performing well, and the 780M trailing it by 7% in this machine, trailing it by 13% in this machine. And again, different laptops could produce different results, obviously. So that's what you're seeing here. However, again, similar results in something like TimeSpy at 1440p, where they're seeing their the Intel GPUs near the top of the pack. However, synthetic benchmark results don't always line up to real-world performance, and we've seen that in the desktop space with Intel GPUs, and we are also seeing that here in this space. And so you're seeing in actually playing games on The Witcher 3 at 1080p, I believe their testing methodology would be used in external display, so you're removing so they're all running 1080p off whatever laptop they have here. Here you're seeing the Intel Arc GPU, iGPU in this system trailing a couple of the 780Ms. We have one 780M in the Lenovo Yoga Slim 14 APU G8, winning by 28%. We see another one just ahead by 3%, and we see another one trailing it by 5%. But it certainly, at least in this Witcher 3 testing here, is showing at least some of the 780M systems ahead. They also have some power consumption metrics there and things like that. So it's hardly a huge set of games. And again, Intel was admitting that in certain games they would be trailing, so it'd be interesting to see a wider set of third-party results in gaming benchmarks. But again, important to look at the distinction between synthetic benchmarks and real-world testing. Looking at another outlet here, this is Hardware Lux, and I've had Google Chrome translate it into English since I believe they're a German outlet. Looking at some of the CPU results, they are showing some Cinebench results where they are showing it ahead of their Ryzen 7 7840HS based system. So there is that, although it can be trailing something like the i7 13700HX. And that's in the, that was the multi-core and single core result, looks like. Cinebench R15 multi-core single core. Cinebench R20. They got a bunch of results here you could scroll through. I'll link all of these in the video description. But basically, it's very interesting to see, like my overall thoughts here are, it's interesting to see Intel moving to a tile architecture. It's interesting to see what does seem like a big advancement in the GPU performance. And I'll be interested to see once there's more testing on that. Personally, I'm kind of interested in like the handheld PC space. We've seen the 780M based AMD systems be very popular in that space. So it will be interesting to see if Intel takes any of that market share with these types of systems. Sorry, my kids got home while I was in the middle of filming the video, so you might hear some talking in the background. I'll give them attention in just 1 second. I also noticed this interesting article. So Epic Games... well, Epic has actually made a big victory in a fight against Google in their, in all that store business, especially in the mobile space, which is less of my wheelhouse. But due to that, there's been some interviews with CEO Todd Sweeney. And in that, he did talk about the Epic Game Store. The headline here is Epic Game Store is the untold success story with 80 million MAUs would be monthly active users, and he's saying it's catching steam fast. Now, this certainly flies in the face of headlines we'd seen recently saying that, Epic Game Store is a big money loser, but, maybe they're gaining the monthly active users with giving away free games, things like that, which isn't free to them. So it looks like he's still happy about the growth and the overall model. I think the overall quote here is, we've gotten so much traction with Fortnite in so many different ways, and with the Epic Game Store, right, we're going to continue investing heavily here. So are they backing off? They're saying we're going to continue investing heavily in the Epic Game Store. The Epic Game Store is the untold success story in the background. Since it launched in 2018, we now have 80 million monthly active users, so they are claiming that as monthly. Steam has 120 million, so we're catching them fast. That's the claim. I know personally, if the game's available on both platforms, I'll buy it on Steam because I like having all my stuff in one place, and Steam, quite frankly, has way more features and it's just a more fully fleshed out system. I do like competition, and I do like there being, but I would like it if the Epic Game Store would be developed to the point where it was fully featured as much as Steam is. So anyway... when asked whether he planned to continue with an aggressive pursuit model of the Epic Game Store exclusives, Sweeney said they're employing a ridiculously aggressive model instead, hinting at further exclusives on the way. He's saying, no, we're in a different model, which is called ridiculously aggressive pursuit model. If it's a 10-slide deck, that's on slide 11. Anyway, he was also asked about Steam Deck support, with games like Fortnite, and he said, if we only had a few more programmers. It's the Linux problem. I love the Steam Deck hardware. Valve has done an amazing job there. I wish they would get tens of millions of users, at which point it would actually make sense to support it. Whew, at which point it would actually make sense to support it. So interesting, because he seems to be complimenting the Steam Deck there, and then maybe throwing a little shade at maybe they don't, haven't sold enough to be worthwhile supporting. We'll see. I don't know. it can be a bit of a hassle to try to get stuff that's outside of the Steam ecosystem onto the Steam Deck. But anyway, thought that was an interesting thing to end out the video with. Hope all of you enjoyed the video. Huge thank you to subscribers, and a huge thank you to channel members who have clicked the join button to support the channel directly financially. Huge thank you, and I hope everyone has an absolutely